Om Ganatimarandasya Ganagana Salakya Chaksurun Miritam Yena Tasmai Sugirve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutare Sayam Rupakaramayam Tarati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sigiru Siyata Parakamaram Shigaran Vaishnavam Sha Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Larita Shivishakhan Vitam Sha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pachari Nirvishesa Sunyavadi Praskata Desatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hari 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 Ram 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 Hari Hari Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jyotiryat Ashtaprayashu Abhadresu Nityam Bhagata Sevaya Bhagata Tamashoki Bhaktir Bhavati Naistaki Nigama Kaparuru Garidam Param Shukamakaramitas Samitam Pibata Bhagatam Ashamadaya Mahura Hora Sikabhavi Bhavakaha. Good morning, and we're so happy that the first comment that's coming up on our screen here is from Anjali to report that her daughter Naradi had a successful surgery early this morning, and I think it was an appendectomy, if I read everything correctly. So if you want to give out some emojis, some hearts and thumbs up for Anjali and her daughter Naradi, go ahead and give her support. She's a regular listener as well as a very vigorous and active contributor here. So I'm very glad to hear, Anjali, that your daughter had a successful procedure in the hospital. Krishna's watching out for you and yours. And boy, you've occasioned an explosion of emojis there. Good morning, Rupa Manjari, John Malik, Govinda Dev, Sundari Priya, Taruni, Jimmy, and I can't see the earlier ones who joined because it's gone beyond and you don't want to have a big thumbprint of mine there on the screen. But anyway, thanks all of you for joining. Yes, correct, appendectomy. It is actually confirmed, a successful appendectomy. On this morning, Wednesday morning, Wisdom Wednesday, we're going through the second chapter of the first canto of the Bhagavatam. Yesterday we did part 2 of the 33rd verse. Today we're going to launch into the 34th verse, second chapter, first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. If you've got it before, you can read with me. Bhava yati esha satbena lokan vai loka bhavanaha lilavatara nurato deva tiran naradishu. Isn't that a coincidence that Narada Muni is being addressed here, and that happens to be the name, the feminine Naradi of Anjali's daughter. Translation. Thus the Lord of the universes maintains all planets inhabited by the demigods, men and lower animals. Assuming the roles of incarnations, he performs pastimes to reclaim those in the mode of pure goodness. And here's the first paragraph of Prabhupada's purport. There are innumerable material universes, and in each and every universe, there are innumerable planets inhabited by different grades of living entities in different modes of material nature. The Lord Vishnu incarnates himself in each and every one of them, and in each and every type of living society. He manifests his transcendental pastimes amongst them just to create the desire to go back to home, back to Gaida. Good morning, Rakesh. The Lord does not change his original transcendental position, but he appears to be differently manifested according to the particular time, circumstances, and society. In the 7th chapter, Mama Peti Punarjanma, Dukale Masaswatam Nabnavanti Mahatmanam Samsiddhim Paramam Gatim. Very clearly describes, the first 2 lines of this verse describe the material world, and the second 2 give the promise of the spiritual world. So the material world is called Dukkha, Layam, Asaswatam. Dukkha means full of miseries, and Asaswatam means temporary. All the living beings in this material world are subject to various types of miseries from the body and the mind, from other living entities, from natural catastrophes like earthquakes and pandemics. And then also, if you get used to it, if you get all stoic about it, take it on the chin, take one for the team. Still, you still can't stay. Even if you make an accommodation with the miseries of material nature, you figure, well, that's just that's the name of the game. Still, you can't stay. You get kicked out. Not a very pretty, inviting picture painted of the material world in this first two lines of this verse from the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. However, it goes on to say, Napnuvanti Mahatmanam Samsiddhim Paramam Gadim. Those Mahatmas whose sights are beyond this temporary miserable material world, who aim for the spiritual world, when they go there, when they elevate and return back home, back to Godhead, they never again come back to this temporary material world. And when the president of the country or the prime minister appears within the prison house, you should not make the mistake of asking, well, what's he in for? One prisoner always asks other prisoners, what are you in for? And we get a lot of people here at the temple in Spanish Fort. They've committed a traffic offense, or maybe they've been chronically truant during school. We had one girl recently, she got in a big fight. So they are given community service hours. Instead of being incarcerated, they go and work for a nonprofit. And so almost every day we get people coming here to work off their community service hours. And they're good people. The infractions are minor. And mostly we don't ask what they're here for. The girl who is here for the fight, she volunteered the information. We didn't ask her. So one of the rules is that when you get someone here on the temple property to do community service, you don't say, well, what are you here for? That's private. It's none of your business. Okay. So if the president of the United States were to come here to the Krishna temple and start getting down on his knees and weeding in the garden or helping train the lamas, we wouldn't be thinking, well, what did he do wrong? What's he here for? Because the court, he's not here because the court gave him community service hours. He's here on his own sweet will. And similarly, in the prison house, although the tendency is to ask everybody who's in the prison house, what are you here for? What was your crime? What was your transgression? There are exceptions to that. Not everybody in the prison house is there because they were sentenced to prison by the court. Some of the guards, the prison warden, and especially if the head executive of the state, if you see him in the prison, it should not be concluded that he's there for some crime. Although, of course, with the current administration, it's entirely possible. But anyway, forget I said that. Generally speaking, the president visits the prison house of his own sweet will, not because he has to, not because he's forced to, not because he did anything wrong, but on a mission of mercy, out of kindness and compassion. His visit to the prison house is with the idea of reclaiming the prisoners back into the mainstream of society. It's an idea of giving a vision of honest citizenship and the benefits that accrue to that. So when the president visits the prison house, the idea is not that he's done anything wrong, but rather that he wants to encourage those who have done something wrong to clean up their act, to get out of prison, and then to become good, productive, honest citizens of the state and enjoy all the freedoms that adhere to that. So in the same way, Krishna, or God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appears within this material world from time to time. Sometimes he incarnates as a fish, sometimes he incarnates as a boar, sometimes he incarnates as a lion. There are 8,400,000 species of life throughout all of the universes. And the Lord incarnates not only in human form, but he also incarnates in many of the animal forms as well. There are more incarnations or avatars of the Lord than there are motes of dust which enter through the beams of sunlight on a summer afternoon. This is all due to the empathetic nature of the Lord. He extends himself in myriad ways and forms in order to some or other try to give fallen conditioned souls suffering in this temporary miserable world a glimpse of the spiritual world and reclaim them or attract them back to home, back to Godhead. This is the reason why the unborn, Ajopishan Avyayatma, why the unborn and the infallible, generally the inhabitants, the residents of this material world, are the opposite of being unborn and infallible. They are born by their karma. They are fallible. They're making mistakes probably all the time. I remember once in Los Angeles, I went to traffic school. And if you've ever been to traffic school, I think you'll agree with me. It's actually quite informative. At least everybody should go to traffic school at least once, because you learn a lot of good stuff in there. And one of the things that the teacher there said, which I thought was true, you may think that the particular in other words, you're at traffic school because someone wrote you a ticket for some infraction. You may think, well, I really wasn't speeding, or I really did stop before those railroad tracks, that it was unfair that I got ticketed for this infraction, because it wasn't an infraction from my point of view. And the teacher, he said, that may be true, but he said everybody commits an infraction on the average once every 10 minutes. So just think of all the infractions that you didn't get ticketed for. And even if it was incorrect that you got ticketed for this infraction, there's so many others that you dodged the bullet on. So don't be a complainer, don't have a pity party, don't cry unfair. Actually count your blessings that you didn't get tickets for all those infractions that you did, because on the average, every driver commits an infraction once every 10 minutes. I thought that was very, very instructive. There's a story in Plato about a group of people who have been chained inside a cave. They're looking at the back of the cave. Behind them, there's a fire, as well as the mouth of the cave, which leads to daylight. Now, what the fire does, it catches their shadows and casts their shadow images on the back wall of the cave. Are you getting a picture of that? So they've been chained there looking at their shadow, reflection, unreal images for many generations. In fact, if you ask their fathers and their grandfathers and their great-grandfathers, they said, yeah, this is reality for us. The shadows which are cast on the back of the cave being dispensed by the fire behind us, that's reality. And they're convinced that's the only reality they know. It's generational. They are not aware of any other reality. So let's say then that you come from outside of the cave, where there are lakes and mountains and fresh air. Everything's not choked up by smoke and flames and cinders, where there's light and freedom. You feel like you can stretch and run and climb and swim. So you come into the cave and you see all these people limited, that their reality is limited by their shadow reflection on the back of the cave. And you try to wake them up. You try to make them aware that this is a poor substance for reality. There's a much greater world which is available to you if you simply turn 180 degrees around and follow me out of the cave. I can introduce you to a much, much greater world. And what do you think the reaction on the part of those people will be? Oh, no, you're a crazy man. We're not interested in that. We're comfortable with this. It's good enough for my father. It's good enough for my grandfather. It's good enough for me. They might even nail that person to a cross, considering them too much of a disturbance to the status quo. Well, this is Krishna. This is God. He's pained, although he's himself free from suffering, has nothing to do with this material world. He's not subject to birth, death, disease, and old age. Karma is not applicable to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We get karma because we break the laws of God. But God is the lawgiver. So the lawgiver is not subject to the laws. He is himself the ordainer. He is responsible for the order. He is the law. Whatever he does is by definition law-abiding and good. There are even instances in the Mahabharata where Krishna broke mundane morality. For instance, he encouraged Yudhishthira to lie in order to kill the powerful Dronacharya. Krishna suggested that Yudhishthira shout out to Dronacharya that your son, Ashwatthama, is dead, that your son has been killed in the battlefield. Yudhishthira was known for always speaking the truth, and so it was believed that when Dronacharya would hear these words coming from the mouth of Yudhishthira, he would believe them, become despondent, lay down his weapons, and then he would be vulnerable. But Yudhishthira refused to tell the lie. And for that, he had to see hell for 5 minutes. So that means that when the lawgiver, the ordainer, the creator of millions and millions of universe, it's by God's will that the sun rises and sets. It's not a law per se that objects fall through the air to the ground, that they go from up to down. It's not so much a law as it is the will of God. So what we call laws are really the consistent, year after year, eon after eon, millennium after millennium, the consistency of God in nature, the harmony that God exhibits through nature. It's not law. To us it appears to be a law, but don't make the mistake that God is under the law, because what we perceive of as the law is simply the consistent, faithful, dependable will of God. You can look up in the Farmer's Almanac and know that in the year 2022, on March 2nd, the sun will rise at exactly this time, and the sun will set at exactly that time. So you may say, well, that's a law. That's a law that the sun rises at this time and sets. No, that is the will of God, which is consistent, which is dependable. So the person whose will is so faithful and consistent that it appears to us that the manifestation of his will through nature appears to be inviolable, unchangeable laws, is not himself under the law. He is the lawgiver. He creates the law. And therefore, when the Lord appears within this material creation, it is as a result of his own empathy, his own compassion, as a result of his own sweet will. He appears to try to reclaim the fallen, conditioned souls back to home, back to Godhead. He appears in a expanded form. There's a part of 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 the Lord who pervades and supports everything in this material creation. He enters fully within the atom. But that manifestation of the Lord who appeared as Krishna 5,000 years ago was not the Paramatma, the supersoul expansion of the Lord. That was the original Shayambhavam, the original personality of Godhead. But let's just take a moment to talk about how the Lord is all-pervasive. This is what Lord Brahma said in his famous poem, the Brahma Samhita, Ekopya Shorachayatam Jagananda Kotim. Throughout the millions and millions of universes, each one of which has millions and millions of planets, Yakchakti Ashti Jagaranda Chaya Yadantam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Andantadashta Param Anu. Anu means indivisibly small, microscopically small. So the Lord is Vibhu. From his expansion of his expansion of his expansion, Mahavishnu, all of the universes emanate from this gigantic form of Mahavishnu, who's a expansion 4 times removed from Krishna. From him, all the universes, from that Vibhu expansion of the Lord, that gigantic expansion of the Lord, all the universes come. And then the Anu, into even particles smaller than the atom, that same Lord, again, twice more expanded as Shiravakshay Vishnu, he enters each and every atom. And this is the verse is translated by the wonderful prose of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, who is Prabhupada, our guru's guru. He is an undifferentiated entity, as there is no distinction between potency and possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him, and he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe at one and the same time. Such is the primeval Lord whom I adore. Now, as we mentioned a few days ago, the ubiquitousness, the Vasudeva, the all-pervasive, everywhere present within the atom expansion of the Lord is just a small particle of his power. You've probably heard people say, God is the universe, or God is everything. This universe, as we know it, is like a dust particle in the material creation of God. Or when people say God is everything, God is the creator of the universe, you're saying, well, God is the creator of a particle dust compared to the vastness of his material creation. And what to speak of the original personality of God in himself. So what we see in this world, all of its opulence and majesty, every glorious and opulence creation, does not represent the full scope of God's power, not even close. In the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna lists all of the different ways that he can be intimated through this material creative world. And at the end of it, he says, Ataiva bahune, kim gane tavarjuna, vistabyamidam kritsnam, ekankshana stito jagat. Anksha means a tiny, tiny part of me. It is with a tiny, tiny part of me that I pervade and support this entire universe. And this universe is just one universe amongst millions of universes, and each universe has an uncountable number of planets. Krishna asks this question of Arjuna: what need is there, Arjuna, for me to go on with all this detailed knowledge? With a single angsa, a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. The conclusion is that the all-pervasive aspect of the Lord is only a part of 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 the majesty of Krishna, who declares, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matasavam prabharjate iti matva bhajanti mam buddha bhava samanvedham. From me everything comes, both material and spiritual, and those who are wise worship me with all of their hearts. Mata parataram nanyat, there is nothing higher than me. Kinchid asti dhananjaya. Mayitaramidam sarvam sutre managanayiva. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. Now, if you guys will bribe me with a lot of emojis, can we say 50? If you can give me 50 emojis, I will give you our rap version of the opulence of the Absolute in the 10th and 11th chapter of the Lord. Oh, we're getting up there. I think we're about 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. Oh man, they are coming now. They are coming now. Okay, I think that's at least 50. Okay, here we go. This is, the basis of it is Kalakanta's book, The Rap of God. I took some of his verses. His lines are quite long, and I think for the purposes of really good rap, they needed to be shortened. So I took them and abridged them, changed them, added a few words here and there. But essentially the structure, I have to give credit to Kalakanta. He's done a magnificent job with this. But it is also some of the Charudas in here as well. Synthesis, okay? No truth exists besides myself. Do not be misled. Everything is strung on me as pearls on a thread. I am the taste of water. I am the light of the sun and the moon. I am the syllable Om. I am the fragrance of the earth. I'm the forest fire, bright red. I'm the blazing sunset. I'm the alphabet from A to Z. All things rest in me. Everything from me arises. I am the faith of the great men. I am the wisdom of the wise. I am the vigor of the strong, not triggered by greed and lust. I am that sex life which is pure, righteous, and just. I am the seed of everything. From me all things arise. I am the Paramatma dwelling with everyone's heart. I am the life of all that lives. I am the ending, middle, and start. I am the sacred Vishnu and of all sorts of lights. I am the sun, stars, and moon at night. The Himalayan mountains, unshakable, unbreakable, indicate me. Of vegetation, I am the banyan tree. I am the unlimited, unendless ocean. Of hymns, I am the Gayatri. Of seasons, I am spring. Of months, I am November, the time of peace and harvesting. I am Kandarpa, god of love, like Cupid with his bow. Of cows, I am Sarabi, who gives milk and limitless flow. Of men, of beasts, I am the lion. Of men, I am the king. I am Yama, the lord of death, who judges everything. Of weapons, I am the thunderbolt. Of conquerors, I am time. Of rivers, I am the Ganges, flowing liquid and sublime. All this is but a tiny indication. There is no end of my manifestations. Every glorious and opulent creation springs from but a spark of my radiation. What need to go on, Arjuna, with a more exhaustive list? A tiny spark of me pervades all that exists. Since I create the dual worlds of spirit and flesh, the wise prioritize my service, keeping their hearts forever fresh. My pure devotees always think of me, follow me all the time, discussing me incessantly. I am theirs and they are mine. Because they serve with love and never swerve aside from within their hearts, I cause ignorance to subside. The wattage of knowledge I shine from within so bright, and in deep parental affection guide them to the light. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the fact that the Lord is everywhere pervasive throughout the universe does not limit the Lord to the universe. The Lord is non-different from the universe in the sense that he is a non-differentiated entity. There's no difference between his potency and the potent thereof. There is no place where the Lord is not fully present, but at the same time, he's not limited to the universe. And he's not limited by the factors that limit us. For instance, his determination, when the Lord determines something, that determination and the fact of it are non-different. There's no lapse. There's no time gap. There's no difference. As soon as the Lord determines something, it becomes an actual fact. It's one way we can understand the infallibility of the personality of Godhead. Now, we might think of doing something, but there are so many impediments between our conception of it, between our determining to accomplish it, and the actual accomplishment of it. Is said there's many a slip between the cup and the lip. We may or may not be able to accomplish it. It may not turn out exactly as we had anticipated. It may not turn out at all. And in any case, even if we accomplish it exactly as we had envisioned it, there will be a time lapse because there are obstacles, there are things that we need to line up, there are connections we need to make, there are funds we need to raise. So it's not possible to have things as we would like them when we would like them. But when Krishna wants to do something, simply by his willing it, everything is performed simultaneously and so perfectly that it is not even possible for us to imagine how it is that Krishna accomplishes things. There is no difference between Krishna's mind and himself. Just as there is a difference between ourselves and our bodies, there's a difference between ourselves and this external material world. There is no difference between Krishna and his own original body. His non-dual body is non-different from himself. The inside and the outside is Advaita, one and the same. Neither is there any difference between Krishna, his original form, in his internal potency, Atma Maya, and Krishna as he pervades and supports the material worlds. Everything, in fact, is God, either in his original form or as in his expanded potencies. Just like the fire might be 20 or 30 feet away, but here I'm saying, oh, the fire feels good. Actually, if the fire were right present before me, 1 or 2, I wouldn't be saying the fire feels good. I would be screaming in agony. So how is it that I can say the fire feels good? Because the fire itself in its original form is 20 or 30 feet away, but what feels good to me are the energies of the fire, the light and heat. And in that sense, the energies in the energetic source are non-different. So similarly, the Lord is everything, but he's also not everything. He has his original separate existence apart from this material world. And the descent of Krishna 5,300 years ago should not be misunderstood to be equivalent to or synonymous with our descent into this material world. We are forced to come here by our misadventures, by the misapplication of our free will. But the Lord chases us. The Lord follows us in his original form. He accompanies us as the super soul. He's within every atom in his all-pervasive aspect, but those are the energies of the Lord. But the energetic source of everything also, can you imagine the extent of his compassion and mercy that original Lord from whom comes all the Vishnus, Mahavishnu, Chiravakshay, Dakshara Vishnu, all the Lilatavas, all the Purusha avatars, all the Yuga avatars, all from whom all of that comes, he comes Jo Pishan Avyayatma, Adbhutanam Ishvara, that Lord who is the Lord even of Vishnus, Brahmas, and Shivas. He comes personally once every day of Brahma, as he did 5,300 years ago. And when he comes, he explains the mysteries of his existence to his friend and devotee Arjuna, such as in this verse, in the 4th verse, 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Mayatadam idam sarvam jagata vyakta murtina majstani sarvabhutini na chaham teshu avastita. Says, I pervade all these three worlds, jagat avyakta, in my unseen, unmanifested form. It is the expansion of my Vasudeva, all-pervasive Chirodakshay Vishnu form that pervades and supports these material worlds. Just in the same way that when we can see a cloud suspended in the air, but what we can't see is the air which is holding the cloud up. The air pervades and supports the cloud, but at the same time the air exists separately from the cloud. Similarly, everything is pervaded and supported. Everything sits, rests on the foundation of the Lord, who is all-pervasive, present within every living being, present within the atom, but at the same time the Lord himself has nothing to do with this material world, and for our point of view, he is invisible and unmanifested. The exact literal translation of this verse is, by me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. The fact that the Lord is all-pervasive should not lead us to conclude that he has lost his personal existence. Those who think of God through mental speculation or try to understand him with the limited abilities of our mind sometimes reason in this way. They think that God is limited and material like a piece of paper. So they imagine that if you tear a piece of paper up into all kinds of little tiny pieces and then disperse those pieces here and there, the original paper is gone. So they argue that inasmuch as God has dispersed himself everywhere within the creation, he is non-different from the creation, he is the creation, and he has no existence separate from this creation. That's all material calculation. It is erroneous, it is inadequate to understand the potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he's not material, he's not like a piece of paper, he's absolute, he's full. Even in the work of creating millions and millions of universes, even in the work of expanding himself into the hearts of all living entities, even inasmuch as he's all-pervasive within the atom, that does not exhaust his powers. He creates all the worlds are perfect, they're all perfectly equipped, and he remains perfect and undiminished by the work of creating millions and millions of spiritual and material worlds. Prabhupada used to say that material arithmetic, you have one, you take one away, you're left with zero. Absolute calculation, you have one, you take whole complete worlds away from that one, and you still have the original one. Not in any way reduced or diminished by those works of unconceivable, unbounded creation. Prabhupada gives a crude example. The king heads up the government, and there are various ministers in charge of governmental affairs who are pretty much autonomous in their own departments: power department, water department, electricity, defense department. The employees of those departments pretty much have to answer to those department heads as if they were God. But they are not God, they're not autonomous, they're not supreme. They have their powers by the sanction of the king. Now, they work independently, they work on their own, they do the bidding of the king. Their employees, their constituents, their dependencies are answerable to them. But the king himself does not need to be personally present in the power department, in the water department, in the tax department, in the defense department. Rather, he's separate and aloof. It is by his influence and his power that the departmental heads have their authority. It is by his power, his delegation of power, his investing his power in them that the departmental heads have the authority and the chutzpah to motivate their employees and make sure that everything goes well within their sphere of activities. The king, however, cannot be expected to personally appear and clock in every day at the beginning of the workday in each and every one of the departmental offices. So similarly, it is by the diffusion of Krishna's power that millions and millions of worlds are created and maintained and destroyed. But he himself is separate from all of that. He has really nothing to do with all of that. He never gets entangled in matter. He is himself internal potency. He's pure, infallible, imperishable, spiritual essence. This is described in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, 6th chapter, 8th verse. Natasya karanam karanam cha vidite, natatsamyascha vyadakastadishade, padasya shaktir vividaya vasruyate, shrabhavaka bala gyadakriyaham. Shri Dakshai Vishnu is within the atom, owes his existence to Garbhodakshai Vishnu, of which he is an expansion. Garbhodakshai Vishnu owes his existence to Karnadakshai Vishnu, of which he's an expansion, and so on and so on and so on and so forth. But Krishna, the original personality of Godhead, owes his existence to none other. There are none prior to Krishna. Krishna is not an expansion of any previous avatar incarnation. He is in fact the source of all expansions. He is full of power, full of knowledge, full of wealth, full of beauty. Wherever we see those qualities manifested in his created world, know it for a fact that they come from him. He is always full, always complete, never diminished by his acts of creation. He is of such a nature that his potencies themselves act with perfect precision, perfect knowledge, perfect symmetry, without his having to personally supervise them. Therefore, it is said of Krishna, Krishna only, not of Vishnu, not of Brahma, not of Shiva, not of Kshirodakshai Vishnu, not of Kanada, not of Garbhodakshai Vishnu, not of Nrsimha, not of Kurma, not of Rama, not of Parashuram. It is said of Krishna and Krishna only, Parashash Natatsamascha Padakastudishate. Krishna is that supreme personality of Godhead than whom nobody is greater or equal. Shobhavaka Balagrana. And his knowledge is in and of themselves causes worlds to be created, to be maintained, and to be annihilated. Planets to course on their orbits through the skies at thousands of miles an hour without colliding or crashing into each other. The suns, myriad uncountable suns, to rise and set exactly on time. The seasons to change. Madbayad Bhativatiyam, Suristapti, Varsadinudhatyam, Mitus Charity Harira. By out of fear of Krishna and Krishna alone, the sun rises and sets exactly according to a scheduled measurement. Out of fear of Krishna and Krishna alone, the seasons change, the flowers bloom and retract themselves in the fall. And it is out of fear of Krishna, Mitus Harati Charatanam, that death chases everyone. In fact, death himself, fear personified, is afraid of Krishna. And so therefore, if you go directly to the source, if you water the root of all creation, all expansions, all avatars, all Brahmas, all Shivas, all Vishnus, by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The conclusion of all Vedic scriptures, of all great acharyas, of all great saints and sages and gurus, is that you will not be the loser, but you will be the gainer by millions and millions of times over. So let's do it one more time, shall we? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hari Rama, Hari Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Hari. That concludes our discussion of the 34th verse in the second chapter of the first canto of the Bhagavatam. I'd like to thank you once again for joining us, Rupa Manjari. I don't know who all came in because, as you can see, if I start scrolling, it won't be pretty. But please leave your comments. If you feel there's something of value here to relieve people in their darkness and their depression in this trying times when we have a worldwide pandemic, people are locked in, they're shut in, they're prevented from going here and there. If you feel that any of our words could alleviate any pain or suffering on behalf of any of your friends, just go ahead and share this or tag them. Comment, ask your questions. The more interactivity that we have, the more we'll get pushed up higher on the algorithm of Facebook. Good morning, Prashad, Sachi. Thank you all for joining me. I'm not going to go through all of your names again, but if you joined us late, have a few emojis right now for Anjali, whose daughter Naradi had a very, very successful, big thumb up, Ki Jai for Anjali, whose daughter Naradi in Phoenix, Arizona, early this morning had a completely successful appendectomy, being protected by the mercy of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That concludes our Wisdom Wednesday, this August 19th, 2020. We'll be back on the weekend for the Chant for Change motivational talks on Saturday night at 7 o'clock, Sunday at 5:15. We also have the Krishna Light Show at 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoons. And if you want to join our weekly Zoom call, our weekly Sangha for the Salt Lake City devotees, I'll put our meeting ID and our password on the Facebook page so you can join us. Otherwise, we will be on Facebook Live Sundays at 11 o'clock. So you can also see us and comment through that. Once again, you can never say it too often, can you? We'll sign off today with the words from the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Big thumb now.